everybody. Miss Julie here. We also have Miss Carol behind the camera. We are here in the Kids in Worship Room, and we are going to do our next story. Before we do, I'd like to talk about where we are in our stories. Last week, we had a great discussion about the Last Supper. We talked about Maundy, Thursday, and how important it is in our church. So many things happened on Maundy, Thursday. We talked about how Jesus had his last meal with his disciples, and Jesus knew it was his last meal with the disciples, even though they didn't really have that information yet. He also gave them the special prayer of the Lord's Prayer, the Our Father, which we have been singing in class, and it's a prayer that is sung by Christians all over the world. So it's such an amazing thing to think how the disciples went around and passed it on, and we still have it today. In our story last week, we talked about how Jesus did an amazing thing, and he became the servant, and he went around to each of the disciples, and he washed their feet. And we even heard how Peter had a hard time with that, and he kept, oh no, you're the teacher, you're Lord, you shouldn't touch my feet. We should have a servant do it, and Jesus insisted on it. And he gave us the ultimate example of how to be a servant and how to treat others. And then he said, you do that and you will be rewarded with joy and blessings. In our last story, we also talked about one of the disciples named Judas and how Jesus knew that he was going to be betrayed by one of his friends, one of his disciples. And we're going to hear a little bit more about that today. And I know a lot of you were here last week. We're curious about Judas and kind of wondering, why did Judas make the choices that he made? So although our story is not going to focus on Judas today, he's going to be one of our main characters today. One of our main people today is going to be Peter. Just like in our last story, when Peter had to tell Jesus, oh no, don't wash my feet. Today, Peter becomes another main character in our stories. When we get started on our story, we always sing the same song, so I figured we will start singing our song to get us in the right frame of mind with our story. So at home, if you're watching this, you can sing along with me. Okay, you ready? Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am God. This is the city of Jerusalem. So many important things happen in this city that we need a small piece of it to help our stories. It's dark in the city. It must be nighttime. Here is a house inside the city walls, and here is a courtyard. This is Caiaphas, the high priest, and this is his house. Outside of the city walls, was a hill. And on that hill, there were a lot of olive trees. This was known as the Mount of Olives. It was night, and Jesus was in Jerusalem, celebrating the Feast of Passover with his disciples. When they were done with their feast, he said to the disciples, "Let's go to the Mount of Olives to pray." Then Jesus said to them, "Tonight I will be arrested. Tonight I will be arrested and you will run away. Later I will be killed. But God will make me alive again. I will go ahead to Galilee. Meet me there." Peter said, "I will always follow you." Jesus said to Peter, "Peter, tonight, before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times." Peter said, "No, I would rather die than deny you." Just then, they saw Judas, one of Jesus' disciples, soldiers, and a crowd with carrying clubs and swords coming towards them. The disciples ran. They came to arrest Jesus, and they bound him. And they took him back to Caiaphas, the house of Caiaphas, the high priest. Peter followed at a distance. There was an elder and a scribe and a chief priest and soldiers. Jesus was questioned about his teaching of the kingdom of God. And they asked him about it, and he said, "Why don't you ask people who heard me teach?" And the soldier slapped Jesus in the face and said, "Don't talk to the chief priest that way." Meanwhile, Peter was outside by the charcoal fire, And a servant girl was there and said, "Hey, you're with Jesus, aren't you?" And Peter said, "No." The servant shouted, "He's one of them." And Peter said, "No, I'm not." A little bit later, another person in the crowd said, "But don't you follow Jesus?" And Peter said, "I don't know who you're talking about." And just then, the rooster crowed. And Peter remembered what Jesus had told him, that tonight, before the rooster crowed, Peter would deny him 3 times. Peter left, and he cried and cried and cried. A lot happened in this story. There's a lot of things to wonder about. I definitely wonder why Peter denied Jesus. I wonder why he didn't admit to being a follower of Jesus. Why he didn't stand up for his friend. I wonder what you wonder about. There are some wonder questions that I sent along with this email that you can talk to your parents about, or you can wonder your own questions, or you can ask your parents what they wonder about. There's a lot to discuss with this story, so have fun and go ahead and wonder. Bye, see you next time.